Hi Frank, good to see you again on this hot summer day. As you can see, the way I am dressed. You had an interview with QuantaMap and I read some of your notes, but this is a very special company. How did you get to interview that company?
Now, what was really interesting is that I saw them on LinkedIn, so I reached out and I said, okay, can I interview you, Johannes? And one of the things that interested me is that I follow semiconductors for APG, and one of the things for AI, what now increasingly becomes more important, is the metrology and the inspection. And so what is very important for semiconductors is that you have high yield, but the more complex chips become, the lower the yields become. And for AI, this is really an issue. And what I really liked for QuantaMap is that one of my key learnings from this episode is that superconducting qubits and quantum computing in general is way more complex than calculating on a normal semiconductor chip.
Could you tell a bit more about this? What was your biggest takeaway from the QuantaMap interview? It seems that this is something which you were not aware of yet.
Yes, that's correct. And one of the things that I was not aware of, I knew that it was more complex, but I didn't fully appreciate the complexity of superconducting qubits and quantum computing in general. And let's maybe take one step back for the audience. Is a normal compute, it's either a 0 or a 1. And with quantum computing, it can be everything in between. And that makes it much more complex. And also superconducting materials, they have quantum effects. And those quantum effects are really sensitive. So small magnetic fields, or energy changes, or current changes, or microwave can disturb the state and then it collapses.
Could you explain a bit more, what does QuantaMap actually do?
Yes, so what QuantaMap does is they have a sensor, a sqUID, and with that sqUID they make a map, a 3D map of the quantum chip. But not only that, the 3D map of the chip, that shows where potential effects could be, and on the height and the structure. But what they also do is with the sqUID, they measure the magnetic fields. And with that, they can measure tiny defects, unwanted currents, magnetic fields, local heating, material imperfections, or weak superconducting behavior. And that can have a big effect, an impact on the performance of a chip. And if you really want to scale quantum computing, we have to move away from hobby R&D and hero projects towards fab ready, and that requires very good measurement and high yields. And I think that what fascinated me is that the tool of QuantaMap can help with that.
Could you explain a bit more what a squid is? For me, a squid is an animal floating in the sea, but
a squid is a superconducting quantum interference device. That's what it stands for. And that sounds complicated, but the simple version is that it's one of the most sensitive magnetic that can measure the most sensitive magnetic fields and current patterns on a quantum chip.
Yes. And why are these diagnostics of measuring these patterns, is that so important? Is that something which is not comparable to what happens with traditional chip measurement?
Yes, because on traditional chip measurement, if with a quantum chip, you need to cool it down. So for superconducting, there are various forms of quantum computing, but for spin qubits and for superconducting, you have to cool it down with a cryostat. And it can be 10 to 20 millikelvin temperature, but could also be below that. And then
That's really
certain,
cool.
yes, and typically if you measure a state, then the state collapses. And what I found really interesting about QuantaMap is they don't measure the state, they measure the things that are not visible with the traditional equipment. And with their superconducting measurement, so with the sqUID, they can measure quantum effects. And with that, they make patterns visible that could indicate potential problems on the chip while not collapsing the system. And maybe explaining that to the listeners is that so at the moment, a quantum state is everything probability between 0 and 1. But once you measure it, then you see, you're going to check what exactly is the state. Is it a 0 or is it a 1? So when you measure it, it collapses to 0 or 1. But then you don't know what caused the defect. And that's currently really a problem. But with QuantaMap, you can measure, for example, certain heat leakages, or you can measure certain changes in magnetic flows, and that could be indications where problems are.
Okay, I think I understand it a bit, but what does this mean for investors right now?
Now, for superconducting, to scale that, it's very important to go from a hero experiment towards more a fab semiconductor process, where you have very high yield and very reliable quantum chips. And what these chips do, the measurement of QuantaMap increases the probability that the yields go up and that the chips become more reliable. And what they could do, they could provide an end-to-end feedback loop where you diagnose certain errors which are not visible with traditional equipment. You measure it, you identify them, and you take action, and then again you measure it. And that could really help to improve the yield and the reliability of the quantum chips, especially for superconducting.
Could you be a bit more specific where exactly they could capture value in the quantum stack?
Yeah, how I see QuantaMap in semiconductors, you could call it the KLA of semiconductors. So it could be really a diagnostic or a semiconductor company.
Okay. And what are the main risks for this company and for this technology?
Now, one of the risks is that there are multiple quantum technologies, superconducting and spin qubits, which use cryostats. And for superconducting, there the sqUID is really used. But for neutral atom and ion trapped and photonics, there it's not used. So if one of those technologies wins, it's not good for QuantaMap.
Okay, so basically there are several potential technologies, and QuantaMap is very well suited for one of them. But if one of the others,
one or two, yeah,
then they don't have a business model.
I'm not saying they don't have a business model, but if one of the others wins, the business model becomes much harder. And you could argue, okay, maybe not the business model. That's one thing. The second thing, risk that I see, is customer adoption. So at the moment, in my interview with Johannes, he mentioned that they have Quantware as customer, and that Rigetti might potentially be interested. But customer adoption is very important.
Okay, that's clear. What would increase your conviction in QuantaMap? It sounds to me like you're looking for customers who actually use them.
Yes, if two things. So first of all, broader customer adoption. So if Rigetti would adopt it and say, okay, we really use it in a process. But also if one customer comes out and said, look, with the help of QuantaMap, we are able to identify certain problems, and that really. So what QuantaMap claims is, they say we can speed up the R&D process by 10 or 20%, and we can improve the yield. So if they deliver on that, that's very positive, and I think it can also accelerate superconducting qubits, and give them potentially an edge versus other technologies.
Okay, that sounds really tough. What is the one sentence investors should remember about your interview with QuantaMap?
What you cannot see, you cannot measure. And I think that's really the story for QuantaMap.
Actually, to me, it sounds that they measure what you can't see, but perhaps I'm wrong.
Yes, that's true. But if you cannot see it, you can also not improve it, and they can see it. So yes, I hope they can improve it.
Well, thank you for this interesting interview. It was very stimulating.